Senator, you were vocal on the campaign trail about the cost of living being too high for Pennsylvanians under Joe Biden. A recent report ranks Pennsylvania among states with the highest grocery costs in the country. So, what are you doing specifically to bring prices down for Pennsylvanians?
Well, what we're seeing nationally is inflation's compounded over the last 4 years, where prices are up by more than 20% and wages haven't kept up. So this is the result of trillions of dollars of incremental spending that took place under President Biden that's driven up prices, and we're now in the process of trying to unwind that. So we've got to reduce the spending, which is one of the things the DOGE effort is all about. We have to create opportunity for businesses by deregulating. And we have to deal with something that's a big deal in Pennsylvania, which is the bird flu. The bird flu is driving up the prices of eggs in particular. We had to kill something like 2.2 million birds last week, and I met with those egg farmers, and that's a huge issue that's driving up grocery prices. There's a lot of work in the upcoming farm bill to try to make sure that we address the issue with bird flu, because it's getting worse for all dairy farmers, or for all egg farmers, but also for a risk to dairy farmers as well.
Is there anything in the short term that you can suggest for Pennsylvanians as a way to stretch their budget a little further?
Well, the other thing that I should have mentioned is just energy prices. So on the first day of his administration, President Trump put in an emergency executive order in place to make it easier for energy producers to create energy. Energy is one of the underlying drivers of all cost. So listen, this is a problem that was created over 4 years. It's going to take more than 22 days to unwind the problem, but there's a whole set of actions in place that should make things a lot easier for working families in Pennsylvania.
Let's turn to tariffs. President Trump recently raised tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 25% without exemptions, aiming to revive that U.S. steel sector, which you know is very important in our part of Pennsylvania. Do you think he's risking a broader trade war by doing this?
Well, again, the one thing that I think everybody would agree on, 24 days into his administration, President Trump is moving on an agenda that's exactly what he promised during the campaign. And one of the things he said is we have to ensure that manufacturing comes home to Pennsylvania, comes home to our country. We have to unlock energy, because energy is a key part of manufacturing being in America. And we have to have fair trade. And what's happening around the world, particularly in aluminum and steel and other places, is subsidies from other countries, unfair trade barriers, actual tariffs, have made it very difficult for American companies to compete, because it's not a fair playing field. What the tariffs are designed to do is ensure we have a fair playing field, which is good for working families, good for Americans. So I think President Trump will be strategic about this. We've seen him be strategic in the past. This was successful in his first term, and we'll see how it develops. But so far, I think it's very much in line with what he said, and I think he'll be successful with it.
So, Senator, time will tell on that. There's been a string of court orders halting some of President Trump's executive orders. Do you believe the president should comply with those court orders, and why?
Well, I heard him today ask this question, and he basically said, I'll follow the judicial system. But I think we need to step back and ask ourselves what's happening here. What's happening again is exactly what President Trump said was going to happen. He said that he was going to come in and he was going to shake up Washington. He was going to rein in bureaucracy that was creating regulations that were making it difficult for businesses. He was going to rein in this progressive social agenda, which has permeated these institutions. And the DOGE effort is meant to do just that. It's meant to shed light. Light is the best disinfectant in terms of understanding whether our government is spending money consistent with what the taxpayers want. And so far, the early evidence is pretty frightening. So if you look at the foreign aid budget, by the way, I'm a believer that we should use foreign aid for strategic interests of the United States, like to combat China's Belt and Road and so forth. But we see all sorts of spending on things that's completely inconsistent with what Americans would expect. Millions of dollars on LGBT initiatives in Colombia or Guatemala, DEI initiatives, all sorts of things that the American taxpayer didn't know and now has to say, boy, is that how I want to spend my hard-earned dollars as a taxpayer? And so this effort's meant to bring that light, shine that light, and reduce cost, rein in the bureaucracy, and it's going to be a continued conflict because the bureaucracy's fighting back. But I think this is right in line with what needs to happen to get our country back on track.
I want to follow up on this court order question. There are national reports that there are cracks in solidarity among Republicans over the possibility that his administration would not comply with those court orders. Where do you stand on all this?
Well, I don't know about any of that. What I would say is the court orders are giving specific guidance, and we have a system designed by our founders that has the checks and balances. And I heard President Trump himself say that he would follow the judicial system. So that's what I expect will happen. But recognize a lot of these lawsuits are meant to blunt what's happening here, which is a true reckoning, shedding light on how we're spending our money and doing exactly what the president promised he would do. Now, while we need to shed that light, we also need to be careful that we don't create chaos and cut the funding for things that are crucial to life-saving activities or critical research to our national security. So there needs to be an exemption policy, and my understanding and experience has been that there is that exemption policy. And I'm going to be very focused on Pennsylvania to make sure that as we have all this shock and awe, that we don't do things that are going to hurt Pennsylvanians. So there's a balancing act, but by and large, I think what President Trump's doing exactly what we need to do to rein in Washington.
Before I let you go, Senator, I want to end with this. Pennsylvania Mark Fogel's release and return to American soil. You were a huge advocate on behalf of his family, urging for his return. What would you like to say about that now that he's home safe?
Well, I spoke with his mother, his 95-year-old mother this morning.
Oh, wow.
I met Mark last night at the White House, and I think she worried. What she said to me exactly was, I was worried that as a 95-year-old mom, I would never get to hug my son again. And she said, and I really thank her for this, she said, I'm so grateful to President Trump. I'm so grateful that, I wasn't just a faceless statistic, that people listened and took action. And it wasn't just Republicans. I mean, I tried to be a strong voice on this, but Senator Fetterman was a strong voice. The congressional delegation, Senator Fetterman and I and the congressional delegation sent a letter to Secretary Rubio and asked him to make this priority. And the president and I were both with Mrs. Vogel at the Butler rally where he was shot. We both had promised her before that rally that we'd focus on Mark, and the president promised that if he was elected president, he'd make it a priority. And here we are, 22 days into his term, Mark Fogel released. I think a great day for Pennsylvania and Americans. This is something that should bring us all together.
Let's end with that. U.S. Senator Dave McCormick, thank you.